The observation deck of the Calreth flagship hung in the darkness between stars. Commander Threll stood before the massive display screen, watching recorded transmissions from the human homeworld. His scales rippled with disgust as another violent image flickered across the view. "This is their entertainment," his intelligence officer reported, manipulating the holographic controls. "They call it cinema. This particular recording shows humans fighting each other with primitive explosives and projectile weapons." Threll watched as digital humans shot, stabbed, and killed each other on screen. The violence was casual, almost celebratory. When the recording ended, another began immediately. This one showed massive ships destroying planets while millions died. The humans watching these images in their theaters were eating processed foods and laughing. "How many hours of this material have we analyzed?" Threll asked. "Over 40,000 hours, Commander. War films, action entertainment, competitive fighting sports, disaster scenarios. Their entire culture celebrates violence and conflict. Even their children's programs contain aggressive themes." Threll's third eyelid closed slowly, a sign of deep concern among his people. The Calreth had encountered aggressive species before. They knew what happened when such species gained advanced technology and reached the stars. The galaxy had lost entire civilizations to these mistakes. "What does the High Council say?" Threll asked. The intelligence officer's scales darkened with somber purpose. "They meet tomorrow, but the preliminary reports are clear. Humanity represents a Class 5 threat. If they continue developing faster-than-light technology, they will become unstoppable within 2 generations." Threll turned away from the screen. He had served in the Confederacy military for 60 cycles. He had seen the aftermath of aggressive species left unchecked. The Vorath had waited too long to act against the Kremlin species. By the time they responded, the Kremlin had already destroyed 4 civilizations. The galaxy had barely contained them. "We know what must be done," Threll said quietly. 24 hours later, the High Council of the Calreth Confederacy voted. The decision was not celebrated, but it was unanimous. Humanity would be eliminated before they became a threat. It was mercy, in a way. Better a quick end now than billions suffering later when humanity inevitably turned their violence outward. The Calreth military moved with practiced efficiency. They had done this before. 3 times in their history, they had removed species that posed existential threats to galactic peace. They did not take pride in this duty, but they did not hesitate either. Admiral Korath commanded the extermination fleet. 200 warships gathered at the edge of human space. Each vessel carried enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Together they could sterilize every human colony in less than a week. "All ships report ready," his tactical officer announced. Korath stood from his command throne. "Begin simultaneous jump. Execute Protocol 17 on all primary targets." Protocol 17 was simple. No communication, no warning, no chance for negotiation. Target acquisition, orbital bombardment, complete sterilization. Any species dangerous enough to warrant extermination was too dangerous to allow time for response. The fleet disappeared into faster-than-light travel. They emerged above 13 human worlds at exactly the same moment. Earth, the human homeworld, was the primary target. Korath's flagship materialized in high orbit alongside 40 other capital ships. "Target population centers," Korath ordered. "Fire when ready." The bombardment began. Energy beams capable of vaporizing mountains struck cities around the planet. Kinetic projectiles moving at relativistic speeds punched through atmosphere like bullets through paper. Each impact released energy equivalent to hundreds of nuclear weapons. Entire cities vanished in microseconds. On Earth's surface, people went about their normal day. Morning in Beijing, afternoon in London, evening in New York. They never saw it coming. The bombardment moved faster than light could carry warning. Billions died before anyone understood what was happening. The human defense fleet scrambled from their stations. 23 destroyers and 6 cruisers. They were designed to fight pirates and handle minor conflicts between colonies. They were not prepared for a Calreth battle fleet. The engagement lasted 11 minutes. Every human military vessel was destroyed. Not a single Calreth ship took damage. Koreth watched the tactical display as red icons representing human ships blinked out one by one. He felt nothing. This was necessity, not pleasure. The humans had sealed their fate with their own violent nature. Status on secondary targets? He asked. Bombardment proceeding on schedule, Admiral. Mars colony is 70% eliminated. Europa station destroyed completely. The outer colonies are responding, but their defenses are minimal. Continue. Operations. I want every major population center reduced to rubble within 6 hours. But in the chaos and fire, some humans survived. Military bunkers deep underground. Colony ships in transit between stars. Research stations on the far edges of explored space. Mining operations in asteroid fields. They received fragmentary transmissions, saw their homes burning, watched billions die, and they realized something the Calreth had not considered. The violent entertainment, the war films, the disaster movies that the Calreth had analyzed so carefully were not instruction manuals. They were not documentation of how humans actually fought. They were stories, fiction, entertainment that humans watched specifically because it was not real. Real human warfare was something else entirely. Deep in a bunker beneath the ruins of Geneva, General Martinez stared at the tactical display. Earth was dying. 12 colonies were gone. The enemy had not sent a single communication. No demands, no terms, just extermination. They're not trying to conquer us, she said quietly. They're trying to erase us. Her staff stood in shocked silence. Martinez turned to face them. Her eyes were hard. Then we have nothing to lose. No rules to follow. No conventions to honor. They wanted a war? She smiled without humor. We'll give them one they'll never forget. She activated the emergency protocols that humanity had hoped never to use. Across the surviving colonies, the same message arrived. 3 words that would define everything that followed. Survive. Adapt. Win. Commander Threll stood in the operations center of the occupied territory on what humans had called New Beijing. The colony had been reduced to rubble 3 weeks ago. His forces now held the planet with a garrison of 5,000 troops. It should have been simple. The military phase was over. Now came the cleanup operations. Except the humans refused to understand they had lost. Another patrol missing, his lieutenant reported. Sector 7. That makes 3 patrols in 2 days. Threll studied the holographic map. Red markers showed where his troops had disappeared. There was no pattern, no obvious strategy, just random vanishings across the ruined city. Send a full platoon to investigate. Heavy weapons, aerial reconnaissance. The platoon deployed an hour later. 40 soldiers in powered armor with enough firepower to level a building. Drones flew overhead, scanning with thermal and motion sensors. They found the missing patrol in an old subway tunnel. Or rather, they found pieces. The bodies had been arranged deliberately, positioned to be visible from the tunnel entrance. Their weapons were missing. Their armor had been stripped. And someone had painted words on the tunnel wall in Calreth blood. This is our home. The platoon leader called for immediate extraction. But when they turned to leave, the tunnel entrance collapsed. Explosive charges, carefully placed. The drones fell from the sky, electronics fried by electromagnetic pulses. Then the humans attacked from side passages, from above, from ventilation shafts that scanners said were too small for entry. They used Calreth weapons taken from previous ambushes. They threw improvised explosives made from mining equipment and agricultural chemicals. They moved through the darkness like they had lived in it their whole lives. When the ambush ended, 38 Calreth soldiers were dead. 2 survived because the humans let them survive to carry the message back. Threll listened to their report with growing disbelief. Humans built New Beijing. They know every tunnel, every maintenance shaft, every hidden space. The city itself is their weapon. This pattern repeated across every occupied world. On Mars, Calreth supply convoys disappeared into the red dust. On Europa, entire garrison posts went dark without warning. On Tau Ceti 4, humans used farming drones modified into flying bombs, crashing them into Calreth command centers. The Calreth military had expected resistance. They had fought insurgencies before, but human tactics made no sense. They violated every principle of warfare that the Calreth understood. Humans booby-trapped their own dead. When Calreth soldiers tried to clear bodies for burial, they exploded. Humans poisoned water supplies that they themselves needed. They burned their own crops rather than let occupiers have them. They set traps that would kill anyone, human or Calreth, just to deny the enemy safe passage. On Earth, a human cell gained access to a Calreth medical facility. They did not destroy it. Instead, they carefully contaminated supplies with a slow-acting toxin. The poison took 3 weeks to kill, and it was agonizing. 200 Calreth medics and patients died screaming. By the time the contamination was discovered, the supplies had been distributed to 6 other bases. Admiral Koreth watched the casualty reports with mounting horror. In 3 months of occupation, his forces had lost 12,000 soldiers. That was more casualties than the Calreth military had taken in the last 50 years of peacekeeping operations combined. They are violating every convention of warfare, his ethics officer protested. Poisoning medical supplies is forbidden by every civilized species in the galaxy. This is beyond barbarism. Koreth stared at the tactical display. Red markers showed human activity across dozens of worlds. We thought their entertainment showed us how they fight. We were wrong. Sir, those films, those violent stories they tell themselves. They watch them for entertainment because real violence is worse. Much worse. We saw their fantasy and thought it was reality. Now we are learning what human warfare actually looks like. He pulled up a report from the Intelligence Division. It contained an analysis of human military history from their own databases. The reading made his scales turn pale. Humans had been fighting each other for their entire recorded history. 10,000 years of warfare. They had developed tactics for every terrain, every situation, every possible disadvantage. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetric combat, psychological operations, scorched earth, total war. The Calreth had 3 documented conflicts in 800 years. Humans had 3 major wars in the last century alone. They practiced violence the way other species practiced art or science. It was not their nature. It was their history, carved deep into their cultural memory. They are not warriors, Koreth realized. Warriors have honor, rules, limits. These are survivors, and survivors do anything to survive. In space, the war evolved in equally disturbing ways. Human colony ships that had been fleeing the invasion suddenly turned around. They were not military vessels. They were civilian transports carrying families, supplies, and equipment for settling new worlds. But humans converted them into weapons. A colony ship called the New Horizon approached a Calreth resupply station. It transmitted peaceful signals, claimed to be surrendering, requested docking permission. The station commander, following standard protocols for accepting surrender, granted access. The New Horizon docked. Then its fusion reactors detonated. The explosion destroyed the station and everything in a 5-kilometer radius. 4,000 Calreth died. The humans aboard the colony ship, including 200 civilians, died with them. It was not a suicide attack. Suicide implied giving up. This was mathematics. Human commanders calculated that trading 200 lives for 4,000 enemy casualties was an acceptable exchange rate. More colony ships followed the same pattern. The Calreth stopped accepting surrenders, so humans changed tactics. They hacked Calreth navigation systems, sending false coordinates. Calreth ships exited faster than light travel inside planetary atmospheres, or too close to stars, or in the gravitational wells of black holes. The ships and their crews simply vanished. Humans created virus programs that infected Calreth automated defense platforms. The platforms turned on each other, or on their own ships, or simply shut down at critical moments. Calreth technology was more advanced, but human programmers had been fighting computer viruses and malware since their information age. They knew things about digital warfare that the Calreth had never imagined. 6 months into the war, the Calreth High Council met in emergency session. The holographic displays showed a war that was spiraling beyond their control. They had lost 40% of their military strength. Entire fleets were bogged down in occupation duties. Supply lines were constantly under attack. And humanity, despite losing 15 billion citizens, showed no signs of surrender. We should offer terms, one counselor suggested. A negotiated peace, territory concessions, reparations. Admiral Korath, attending via holographic link from his flagship, slowly moved his head in the Calreth gesture of negation. We have tried, through back channels, neutral intermediaries, even public broadcasts. Humanity's response is always the same 3 words: unconditional surrender only. That is madness. They cannot win. They are not trying to win, Korath said, quietly. They are trying to make victory so costly that we lose even by winning. And it is working. 2 years after the first bombardment, the war had spread across 30 star systems. The Calreth Confederacy had committed 70% of their total military strength to the conflict. They controlled the space lanes. They held the major colonies. By every traditional measure of warfare, they were winning. But the casualty reports told a different story. In a hidden asteroid base in the Sigma Draconis system, General Martinez reviewed the latest intelligence data. Her command center was carved into solid rock 3 kilometers deep. The wall still showed blast marks from the mining charges that had created this space. 50,000 humans lived in this facility now. Military personnel, civilian refugees, and children born since the war began, who had never seen an open sky. Our scouts confirm the Calreth are establishing a major shipyard in the Beta Hydri system, her intelligence officer reported. Captain Chen had been a civilian programmer before the war. Now she commanded humanity's cyber warfare division. It is their largest construction facility. They are building the ships there that will be used to complete our extermination. Martinez studied the holographic projection. The shipyard was massive, a ring structure 50 kilometers in diameter with construction slips for capital ships. Automated defense platforms surrounded it. A full battle fleet protected the system. It was the most heavily defended installation in Calreth space. How long until it becomes operational? Martinez asked. 6 months, maybe less. Once those ships launch, we will not be able to stop them. The Calreth will have the numbers to occupy every remaining human settlement simultaneously. Martinez nodded slowly. She was 43 years old but looked 60. The stress of commanding humanity's desperate resistance had aged her. She rarely slept more than 4 hours. She could not remember the last time she had eaten a meal without reviewing casualty reports. Then we need to destroy it, she said simply. Her staff exchanged glances. General, the facility is 12 light years behind enemy lines. We would need to get a strike team through the entire Calreth defense network without detection. Then we use what we have learned. Martinez turned to Chen. You have been mapping their communication networks. Can we get through their security? Chen's expression grew thoughtful. Maybe. The Calreth rely heavily on automated systems. Their computer architecture is actually quite elegant, very efficient. But efficiency creates predictability. We have been studying their code for 2 years now. I think I can get us in. How? We send a small ship, something they would ignore. A damaged merchant vessel perhaps transmitting distress signals. If I can get close enough to one of their communication relays, I can upload a virus into their network. It will spread slowly, carefully, hiding in routine system checks and maintenance protocols. We wait until it reaches the shipyard's central computer core, then activate it. Martinez considered this. What would the virus do? Whatever we want. Shut down life support, disable weapons, open airlocks, turn their defense platforms against the facility itself. Chen paused. Or we could be more subtle. Make small changes to construction specifications, weak points in hull armor, flaws in reactor shielding. The ships they build would look perfect, but be fundamentally unsafe. They would not discover the problems until the vessels were deployed and it was too late. The other officers in the room were silent. What Chen described was not just sabotage. It was patient, calculated, long-term destruction. Do it, Martinez ordered, but make it catastrophic, not subtle. We do not have time for slow kills. I want that shipyard gone. 3 weeks later, a badly damaged human cargo ship appeared at the edge of the Beta Hydri system. It was transmitting automated distress signals. Life support failing. Engines offline. Crew dead or dying. A Calreth patrol investigated and found exactly what the distress signal claimed: a wreck. Nothing dangerous. They towed the ship to a salvage facility for processing. Standard procedure. The facility's computers automatically interfaced with the ship's systems to assess salvage value. The virus uploaded in 0.3 seconds. It was the most sophisticated piece of malware ever created by human programmers. It moved through the Calreth network like a ghost, copying itself, learning, adapting. It hid in system logs and routine processes. It waited. 48 days later, it reached the shipyard's central core. Captain Chen, monitoring from 12 light-years away, sent the activation code. The virus executed its primary function, took control of every automated system in the shipyard simultaneously. The construction platforms, the defense satellites, the weapons arrays, the docking clamps, the reactor controls. Then it made them all do the worst possible things at the worst possible time. Defense platforms rotated their weapons inward and fired. Construction platforms released the half-built ships they were holding. The massive vessels, not yet structurally complete, tore apart under their own mass. Reactor cores were pushed past safety limits. Some ships exploded. Others simply broke, apart, spilling radioactive material and debris. The docking clamps released every vessel in the facility simultaneously. With no engines active, they collided with each other and the shipyard structure. The ring began to break apart. Automated safety systems, also compromised by the virus, did nothing. Emergency crews received false information telling them everything was fine. By the time anyone understood what was happening, it was too late. The entire shipyard was destroyed in 17 minutes. 40,000 Calreth workers died. 200 partially completed warships were lost. The explosion was visible from the planet below as a new star briefly appearing in the sky. Admiral Koreth received the news in his command center. He watched the sensor recordings 3 times, unable to fully process what he was seeing. The shipyard represented 10 years of construction and billions of credits of investment. It was gone. All of it. How did they do this? He demanded. His cybersecurity chief looked physically ill. They inserted malware into our network. It has been spreading through our systems for weeks. We found fragments in 17 other installations. If they had wanted to, they could have crippled our entire infrastructure. The implications were staggering. The humans had been inside their networks, invisible, for over a month. They could have sabotaged anything they had chosen to destroy. The shipyard, but they could have done so much more. Purge everything, Koreth ordered, every computer system. Back to baseline. Manual oversight on all critical functions until we can guarantee security. Sir, that will take months. Our fleet operations will be severely limited. Do it anyway. But the damage was done. The shipyard attack proved that nowhere was safe. The Calreth military could not trust their own technology. Human cyber warfare capabilities exceeded anything in the Calreth experience. On Earth, in the ruins of what had been Sydney, a cell of human fighters received the news of the shipyard's destruction. They had been fighting for 2 years without respite. Most of them had lost everyone they loved. They were exhausted, starving, and running low on ammunition. But they cheered when they heard about the shipyard, because it proved something important. They could still hurt the enemy. They could still fight back. A young soldier, barely 20 years old, looked at the cell leader. Do you think we can actually win this war? The leader was quiet for a long moment. She had been a teacher before, the bombardment. She taught literature to high school students. Now she taught people how to kill. I do not know if we can win, she said honestly, but I know we can make them lose. And sometimes that is enough. She did not say what they all knew. That making the enemy lose might mean humanity died too. That survival was no longer guaranteed. But if they were going to die, they would take the Calreth with them. It was not the kind of war anyone wanted, but it was the only war humanity knew how to fight anymore. The Galactic Assembly met in emergency session for the first time in 300 years. Representatives from 47 species gathered in the Great Chamber on neutral ground. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, a space station, built by 12 civilizations working together. It represented everything the galaxy valued: cooperation, dialogue, peaceful resolution of conflicts. Today, it would discuss genocide. Ambassador Telreth of the Calreth Confederacy stood at the central podium. His scales had lost their shine. He looked older than his years. The burden of his species' actions weighed visibly upon him. "Honored delegates," he began, his translator rendering his words in 46 languages simultaneously. "We come before you to seek intervention in a conflict that threatens not just the Calreth, but the stability of this entire region of space." He activated the holographic display. Images appeared above the chamber. Ruined Calreth installations, casualty reports, intercepted human communications that spoke of revenge and total war. Humanity is not merely defending themselves. They have become something monstrous, a species driven by rage and vengeance. They violate every convention of warfare. They poison medical supplies. They weaponize civilian vessels. They destroy without mercy or restraint. Telreth paused, letting the images speak. Burned Calreth cities. Soldiers killed in ambushes. The shattered remains of the Beta Hydri shipyard. If this conflict continues, it will not end with military defeat. It will end with extermination. Either theirs or ours, perhaps both. We ask the Assembly to intervene, to enforce peace, to stop this madness before it consumes us all. The delegates listened in silence. When Telreth finished, the High Arbiter of the Assembly spoke. She was a member of the Varathi, a species so old they had achieved spaceflight before humans evolved from primates. "The images you show are disturbing, Ambassador Telreth, but they tell only part of the story. Before this Assembly votes on intervention, we must hear all facts. I call upon the human representative to speak." A holographic image appeared at the podium opposite Telreth. It showed General Martinez broadcasting from her hidden asteroid base. She wore a simple military uniform that had been repaired many times. Her face was hard and showed no fear. "Honored delegates," Martinez said. Her voice was steady. "Ambassador Telreth asks you to save his people from the consequences of their own actions. Let me provide context he conveniently omitted." She activated her own display. New images appeared. Earth burning under orbital bombardment. Cities vaporized in microseconds. Billions dying without warning or chance to defend themselves. The Calreth started this war with attempted genocide. They gave no warning, sent no demands, offered no chance for negotiation or surrender. They simply appeared above our worlds and began killing. 15 billion humans died in the first week. 43 colonies were completely sterilized. The chamber stirred. Several delegates spoke quietly to their aides. "You speak of our violations of warfare conventions," Martinez continued, looking directly at Telreth. "What convention allows planetary bombardment without declaration of war? What convention allows the murder of civilians in their homes? You analyzed our entertainment media and decided we were too dangerous to exist. You tried to kill us all based on the movies we watch for fun." She let that sink in. "You did not expect us to fight back. You thought we would die quietly. Instead, we fought with everything we had. Yes, our methods are brutal. They are brutal because you left us no choice. You cannot start a war of extermination and then complain that your victims fight too hard." The High Arbiter raised a hand for silence. "The Assembly recognizes that the Calreth initiated hostile action without provocation. However, General Martinez, humanity's subsequent actions have been extreme even by the standards of defensive warfare. The poisoning of medical facilities, for example, resulted in the deaths of wounded soldiers who were no longer combatants." Martinez's expression did not change. "I am aware of that incident. I authorized it personally. You want to know why? Because the Calreth do not take prisoners. They do not negotiate. They do not accept surrender. Every soldier they field will continue fighting until they achieve their original mission, our complete extermination. We do not have the luxury of distinguishing between threats and non-threats when every Calreth alive serves that goal. She paused. But you do not need to take my word for this. Review your own intelligence. How many communications has the Calreth military sent to humanity offering terms? How many chances for negotiated settlement have they extended? The answer hung in the air. None. The Calreth had never offered anything except death. So do not lecture me about conventions, Martinez said coldly. We will discuss conventions when the people trying to exterminate us agree to stop. Until then, we fight with whatever means we possess. The assembly debated for 6 hours. The Varathi argued for intervention. The younger species, particularly those who had faced aggression from more powerful neighbors, were less certain. The Calreth had precedent on their side, 3 previous preemptive strikes against potentially dangerous species. But none of those species had possessed faster-than-light travel. None had been attacked after establishing interstellar civilization. Finally, the assembly voted. 26 species supported military intervention to enforce a ceasefire. 19 opposed. 2 abstained. The resolution passed. Peacekeeping fleets from 12 species mobilized. 20,000 ships with a mandate from the galaxy itself. They would enter the war zone, separate the combatants by force if necessary, and impose a negotiated settlement. It was the largest military operation in assembly history. The fleet deployed to the border between human and Calreth space. They broadcast their intentions on all frequencies. By authority of the Galactic Assembly, all hostile actions will cease immediately. Any ship that fires weapons will be disabled. This conflict ends now. The Calreth forces, exhausted and depleted, gratefully withdrew to defensive positions. They welcomed the intervention. Humanity's response came 12 hours later. A small human ship approached one of the assembly peacekeeping carriers. It transmitted a standard docking request. The carrier, following the assembly's own regulations about treating all parties fairly, granted permission. The human ship docked. 8 humans in light armor exited. They walked through the carrier's corridors without resistance. When they reached the main computer core, they pulled out portable terminals and jacked directly into the carrier's network. It took them 40 minutes to bypass security and gain access to the ship's communication array. They broadcast a message on every frequency the carrier could reach. It went to every ship in the peacekeeping fleet, every military installation in the sector, every planet within 50 light-years. The whole galaxy heard the same message. This is Sergeant Williams of the Terran Resistance Forces. I speak for humanity. We reject the Galactic Assembly's authority to intervene in this conflict. For 2 years you watched the Calreth murder billions of humans. You did nothing. You held debates. You wrote reports. You expressed concern. But you did nothing. Williams's voice was rough, angry, and absolutely certain. Now the Calreth are losing. Now their victims are fighting back effectively. Now suddenly you care about conventions and proportional response and negotiated settlements. Your hypocrisy is noted and rejected. The peacekeeping fleet scrambled to cut the transmission, but the humans had good encryption. The message continued. You come here with 20,000 ships to save our enemies from us. We have a message for you. Leave. This is our fight. You do not get to watch genocide and then prevent justice. If you do not withdraw, you will learn the same lesson the Calreth learned, that humans will do anything, sacrifice anything to survive, and we will include you in that equation if necessary. The transmission ended. The humans were captured within minutes, of course, but the damage was done. The message had reached the entire galaxy. The assembly was in uproar. The Varathi delegate demanded immediate military action against the human terrorists. The Calreth seconded this motion desperately, but other voices rose in opposition. The Anathi representative stood. The Anathi were an old species, peaceful by nature. They had been nearly destroyed by Calreth aggression 800 years ago. They survived only because the Calreth eventually moved on to other targets. I have heard humans called terrorists, the Anathi delegate said quietly. I have heard them called violators of galactic norms, but I have not heard them called wrong. The Calreth tried to exterminate them without cause. Humanity fights for survival. If we punish them for fighting too effectively, we prove their point about our hypocrisy. She paused. The Anathi will withdraw from the peacekeeping operation. Moreover, we will provide humanitarian assistance to human refugees. If the Assembly wishes to help end this conflict, it should pressure the Calreth to surrender, not the victims to stop defending themselves. The chamber erupted in chaos. 3 more species announced their withdrawal from peacekeeping operations. The coalition was fracturing, and in hidden bases across a dozen systems, humanity prepared for the next phase of their war. They had made their position clear: no peace without justice, no justice without victory. The Anathi support changed everything. They provided humanity with something more valuable than weapons or ships. They provided information, complete maps of Calreth territory, detailed intelligence on military installations, patrol patterns, communication protocols, defense weaknesses. The Anathi had been gathering this data for 8 centuries, waiting for a chance to settle old scores. Now they handed it all to humanity. General Martinez stood in her command center, reviewing the intelligence with her senior staff. The asteroid base had grown over 3 years of war. 50,000 people had become 100,000. Refugees who had nowhere else to go. Soldiers who would fight until death. Children who learned mathematics by calculating weapons trajectories. This is everything we need, Captain Chen said, examining the data. Complete network architecture, access codes, even the personal schedules of their High Council members. The Anathi have been preparing for this for a very long time. Can we reach their homeworld? Martinez asked. Her tactical officer pulled up a star chart. Yes. With the Anathi navigation data, we can plot a course that avoids their main fleet. Concentrations. It would take 6 weeks at maximum speed. We would need to commit our entire remaining fleet. Every ship, every soldier, everything. Martinez studied the chart in silence. Red lines showed human-controlled space much smaller than 3 years ago. Blue marked Calreth territory, vast and powerful. A single yellow line threaded between them, reaching deep into enemy space to touch a single blue star. Calreth Prime, their homeworld, where 8 billion Calreth citizens lived in cities that had never seen war. If we do this, her intelligence officer said quietly, there is no coming back. We will be committed to total war. No negotiation, no retreat. We win or we die. We were already committed to that, Martinez replied. The Calreth committed us the moment they opened fire on Earth. The question is not whether we fight, it is whether we win. She turned to face her staff. These people had followed her for 3 years through the darkest period of human history. They trusted her judgment, even when that judgment led them into hell. Prepare the fleet, she ordered. We are going to end this war. 6 weeks later, the human fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Calreth home system. 200 ships. Not the massive dreadnoughts the Calreth commanded, but smaller, faster vessels built for hit-and-run attacks. Carriers, hauling fighter craft. Destroyers carrying kinetic weapons. Transport ships that had been converted into missile platforms. It was every military vessel humanity had left. If they lost here, human resistance would collapse. Admiral Koreth received the alert in his command center on the occupied Earth. His remaining forces were spread across 30 systems, holding down human resistance cells, protecting supply lines, guarding installations. He had kept a reserve fleet near Earth to prevent exactly this kind of counterattack, but they had not attacked Earth. They had gone for the homeworld. How long until they reach Calreth Prime? He demanded. 6 hours at their current speed, Admiral. The home defense fleet is scrambling, but they only have 80 ships immediately available. The rest are in dock for maintenance or out on patrol. 80 against 200. The odds were bad, and the humans had proven they would do anything to win. Koreth made the hardest decision of his military career. Recall all fleet elements. Maximum speed to Calreth Prime. Strip every garrison. Abandon every position. Everything we have goes. To defend the homeworld. Admiral, if we pull out of the occupied territories, the human resistance will reclaim them within days. Then let them, Korath said harshly. None of that matters if the humans glass our homeworld. The recall order went out. Calreth ships disengaged from battles across a dozen systems and jumped to faster-than-light speed, but they would take hours to arrive. The home defense fleet would have to hold until reinforcements came. On the bridge of the human flagship Defiance, General Martinez watched the Calreth defense fleet deploy, 80 ships moving to intercept. More would come, she knew. The Calreth would strip every garrison to defend their home. Good. That was exactly what she wanted. Open a channel, she ordered. All frequencies. I want every Calreth in this system to hear this. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, General. Martinez took a breath. What she said next would determine whether humanity survived or died. This is General Martinez of the Human Military Forces. We are here to offer terms. You have 24 hours to surrender your High Council for War Crimes prosecution. They will face trial for the genocide they attempted against humanity. If they are surrendered, your civilians will not be harmed. Your cities will remain intact. Your species will survive. She paused. If you refuse, we will do to Calreth Prime what you did to Earth. Total bombardment. Complete destruction. We have nothing left to lose and every reason to make you pay for what you have done. You have 24 hours to decide. The channel closed. Around the system, Calreth ships and stations erupted in frantic communication. The defense fleet held position uncertain. They had orders to engage, but the human fleet was not attacking. They were waiting. On Calreth Prime in the capital city, the High Council met in emergency session. Through the large windows of the council chamber, they could see their sun. Somewhere out there, beyond visual range, 200 human warships were pointed at their world. They are bluffing, one counselor insisted. They do not have the firepower to breach our planetary shields. They destroyed our shipyard with 8 soldiers and a computer virus, another countered. They turned our own platforms against us. Do you truly believe they cannot find a way through our shields? The debate raged for hours. Some wanted to fight. Others advocated surrender. The military representatives warned that human capabilities consistently exceeded estimates. Finally, the High Council's leader, Prime Counselor Kethral, stood. He was old, ancient by Calreth standards. He had voted to authorize the extermination of humanity 3 years ago. That decision had seemed so clear then, so necessary, so righteous. Now 8 billion lives depended on what he said next. We will surrender, he said quietly. All those who voted for the human extermination, myself included, will turn ourselves over for trial. We will accept the consequences of our actions. The council chamber erupted in protest. We cannot surrender. It will humiliate our entire species. Kethral's scales darkened with finality. We already humiliated ourselves when we tried to commit genocide and failed. Now we will take responsibility. It is the only honor we have left. 12 hours later, a small Calreth shuttle approached the human flagship. It carried the members of the High Council who had voted for humanity's extermination. They came without weapons or guards. They came in surrender. Martinez watched them board through security monitors. These beings had ordered the deaths of billions. She had lost friends, family, her entire world because of their decision. Part of her wanted revenge, wanted to see them suffer, but revenge was not justice. Take them into custody, she ordered. They will be tried fairly under galactic law. We will prove that humans can show mercy even when we were shown none. The news spread across the galaxy within hours. Humanity had reached the Calreth homeworld and forced surrender without firing a shot. The High Council was in custody. The war was over. But the aftermath was complex. The Calreth Confederacy was in chaos. Their military was shattered. Their government collapsed. Occupied human worlds were liberated but lay in ruins. Both species faced decades of rebuilding. The Galactic Assembly watched in amazement. They had expected humanity to destroy Calreth Prime, to complete the cycle of revenge with their own genocide. Instead, humanity had drawn a line. They had distinguished between the leaders who ordered the war and the civilians who suffered under those leaders. The trials lasted 6 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The High Council members were found guilty of crimes against sapient species. Most were sentenced to life imprisonment. Some, including Prime Counselor Kethril, were executed after. He specifically requested that sentence, saying his people deserved to see justice done. 5 years after the war ended, General Martinez stood at a memorial on rebuilt Earth. The memorial was a simple wall, 50 meters tall, engraved with 15 billion names. Every human who died in the Calreth bombardment. It would take a person 3 years of continuous reading to read every name aloud. A group of young military officers stood nearby, fresh graduates hearing her speak about the war for a documentary. They thought we were violent because of our entertainment, Martinez said, touching the wall gently. They analyzed our movies and our games and concluded we were dangerous. They did not understand that we create those stories to remind ourselves of the cost of violence. We tell ourselves these tales so we never forget why we fight and why we must eventually stop fighting. One of the young officers raised a hand. General, do you think we made the right choice at Calreth Prime? We could have destroyed them, made them pay for everything. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. We could have, she agreed. And if we had, what would we have become? The same thing they feared we were. Monsters who kill, without restraint or conscience. We would have proven them right. She turned to face the officers. What they expected. Merciless warriors who glorify violence, that was not what they got. They got something that scared them much more. They got humans who understand that survival and morality are not opposites. They are the same thing. We survive by being better than those who try to destroy us. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our capacity for violence, but our capacity to know when to stop. The young officers absorbed this in silence. Above them, ships moved across the sky. Human ships, Calreth ships, even some Anathi vessels, here to help with reconstruction. The galaxy had learned that humanity would fight with absolute ferocity when threatened. But they had also learned that humans could show mercy in victory. It was a reputation that would protect humanity for generations. No species wanted to face humans in total war. But they also knew that humans could be negotiated, reasoned with, trusted to honor agreements. The war had made humanity into what the galaxy least expected. Not heroes, not monsters. Just people who would do whatever necessary to survive, but who never forgot the difference between necessity and cruelty. That was the lesson written in 15 billion names on a memorial wall under a rebuilt sky. And it was a lesson the galaxy would not forget.